Greetings, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. An editorial from the Sunday Times, which appears on the Times Live website, is entitled, and it's from the editors, "Hey, Donald Trump, it's called the G20, not the G1. Oh, thank you for that insightful commentary. The U.S. continues to drive the narrative that South African government is committing genocide against Afrikaners, ignoring farm murders, and confiscating land from minority white people. Never mind the fact that the uptake on his refugee status provisions for Afrikaners has been as attractive as a bag full of sand to a man wandering in the desert. And hardly anyone is jumping at the opportunity. The numbers don't add up, but he will not be swayed. Well, here we go. Leftists raising the specter of a white genocide yet again. If it's not true, which it isn't, then stop pouring gasoline on the fire. But of course, this is what they're all about, pouring gasoline on the fire, stoking the flames of racial hatred with their nonsense, and then blaming it on the other side. As far as ignoring farm murders, yeah, that's certainly the case. Ramaphosa himself told the world when Bloomberg interviewed him in January of 2021 at the United Nations in New York that there are no murders in South Africa. There are no farm murders in South Africa. There are no white farmers being murdered. His words, not mine. Now, we also know that SAPS intentionally submits false reports on criminal attacks and murders as listing them as house robberies. We have the receipts. I've shown this previously. Now, hardly anyone is jumping at the opportunity to become a refugee. Well, how exactly has the Times editorial board reached that conclusion? Please, tell us the number of cases that are open, those that are being processed, those that have been closed, the number of refugees have already come over. You can't. Why? Because you have no idea, and you choose to spread misinformation to mislead readers to achieve whatever your goal is here. They say Trump has taken a liking to tariffs as an instrument to redefine America's economic and political relationship with countries around the world, including strategic allies. He has been known to justify those tariffs on countries by citing some sort of conflict of interest that has nothing to do with trade. Actually, no. Tariffs, quotas, import bans, and artificial administrative barriers are the reasons Trump correctly cited for the tariffs, not a conflict of interest. That's disingenuous. Europe, for example, was charging 10% for U.S. automobiles and were putting quotas on the number of cars we could ship to most countries in Europe, while we allowed free access to our marketplace and just 2% tariffs. That's not fair. South Africa bans pork exports from the U.S. That's not fair. South Africa imposed a 75% tariff. That's not fair. You're mistaken. The tariffs are reciprocal tariffs to get countries to lower their barriers to U.S. trade and treat us fairly. And in fact, they are correct about Trump using tariffs for political change. He has used the threat of tariffs to affect political change in Denmark, which refused to patrol the Arctic sea lanes and protect Greenland. Now they're going to spend almost $1 billion buying ships and building a base. Panama, which was negotiating, let a Chinese communist company take over the Panama Canal, which we built at the cost of over 30,000 American lives over a century ago. And Colombia, which agreed to take back their criminal alien invaders who were convicted murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and then as the C-17 was in flight, thought they'd grandstand and say, no, we're not going to take it. It's an insult to Colombia. Well, Trump threatened them with 50% tariffs immediately and 100% at the end of the week if they didn't change their behavior. That worked. Those efforts were true, and they were effective. They say that the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act between South Africa and the U.S. expired without renewal in September. Number one, that's fake news. The Africa Growth and Opportunity Act was not between South Africa and the United States. It was for Africa, not South Africa. So number one, factually incorrect. They say this was followed by the U.S. imposing tariffs on South Africa amid claims of the aforementioned white genocide, which they put in quotes, which again, they raise. I'm not raising it, they're raising it. So this is a completely disingenuous paragraph. The Africa Growth and Opportunity Act expired. It had nothing to do with Trump. No one in Congress except for Chris Coons dared or cared to renew it, as his bill sat in the Senate going nowhere since February of 2024, a full year before Trump came to office. So lying against the defeat of Donald Trump is just a lie. Now, the tariffs have nothing to do with the Times canard of white genocide. They were not imposed in February when Trump put his executive order on South Africa, but in August when Trump applied the tariffs to 90 countries. Now, the other 89 countries are not running around inventing terms to smear their opponents like white genocide while executing racial persecution on ethnic minorities through expropriation and other means and 145 racist laws. Only South Africa is doing that. This is just disingenuous by the Times. Now, in response to this, the U.S. has made a U-turn. It's reported that the U.S. government has changed its mind and will be sending a delegation to attend the G20. No. Nearly a full day after the White House, through Carolyn Leavitt, told the world that Ramaphosa was smoking his socks, the editorial board ran this op-ed today with fake news.
the United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa.
Knowing full well that Carolyn Leavitt said it wasn't true 18 hours prior to them publishing their op-ed. They say it's still unclear as to the level of seniority of the delegation that will be arriving from the U.S. However, Pretoria, through DERCO, has been unshakable in its stance that the U.S. should respect the dignity and gravity of this global leaders summit and send an appropriate delegation. No U.S. delegation from the states is attending, and that was never stated. That's not what the note verbal said. The diplomatic communication said that a delegation from the embassy led by the charge d'affaires would arrive to receive the handoff after the summit was over.
That the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
And the handoff is unlikely, as Pretoria has violated Vienna Convention norms, insulting a senior U.S. diplomat and refusing to hand over the baton. So what's the point? Once again, this op-ed was already fake news before it was even printed. Now they say perhaps the Trump administration should take this opportunity to mend fences with neighbors, allies, and trading partners, focusing on a more prosperous, safe, and environmentally sustainable future for all, instead of antagonizing and intentionally fabricating falsehoods about other sovereign states, as we have recently witnessed. Do they actually believe this nonsense? Denmark failed to fulfill its NATO obligations to patrol and defend Greenland and its Arctic Sea lanes. Almost every NATO member took the U.S. for a free ride, failing to meet their own stated goals of 2% of GDP for defense spending for over a decade. Freeloaders. The European Union imposed excessive tariffs on U.S. autos at 10% while enjoying a 2% tariff for entry into our marketplace. Mexico allowed its sovereign soil to be used as the largest transshipment point for illicit narcotics on the planet and did little to nothing to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. South Korea and Japan maintained barriers to U.S. goods and services to protect their markets. China established illegal policing stations on U.S. soil, engaged in pervasive industrial espionage. Just today, we learn of 2 more Chinese nationals arrested for trying to smuggle NVIDIA artificial intelligence processors to China. Industrial espionage. They infiltrated the Democratic congressman's pants. Yeah. Eric Swalwell, Fang, Chinese spy. They attacked Taiwanese and Philippines maritime shipping and Coast Guard ships at sea in international waters. They poisoned millions of American pets with tainted pet food. They destroyed Hong Kong's democracy. Copyright theft, trademark infringement, excessive tariffs, quotas, banned products, and they use rare earth elements as geopolitical weapons against anyone who dares to defy them. Now, I could go on for hours about the mistreatment of the United States, which cowards in Washington, D.C. have allowed for over 2.5 decades. Things the Times editorial board somehow seem wholly ignorant of, or rather, they choose not to share with their readers. Why, you might ask yourself? Well, it's simple. It's not about news. It's about serving the interests of the African National Congress and the leftist elites who deign to decide what the world should know about and how you and I should live our peasant lives. They say that the world now, more than ever, needs leaders who are passionate and able to tackle the very real challenges that communities across the globe face daily, such as famine, climate change, conflict zones, health, human trafficking, and many other issues that create instability and volatility in the world. Now, the problem with this is they're disingenuous. That's exactly what Trump has done on many of these issues. Trump has tackled more conflict zones than any global leader since World War II, the DRC, Sudan, Gaza, Ukraine, the Caucasus, Thailand, and so on. And Trump has done more to shut down human trafficking than any leader on the planet, closing the pipeline coming through Latin America, trafficking women and children and boys and girls into the United States and around the world. So this is such a disingenuous, dishonest op-ed from the Sunday Times, published today, the 21st of November, as the G20 summit is about to launch. It's fake news. They're willfully ignorant and leave out all the truth because they hate Donald Trump. Why? Because they hate America. Why? Because they're elites who live privileged lives on the backs and sweat and brow of black, brown, and white South Africans who make it possible for them to be wealthy and elite and arrogant. Virtually nothing they said in this op-ed is true. As valuable as a bag of sand in the desert? Give me a break. The interest in the refugee program is off the charts. The number of people being processed now is off the charts. And the fact that they don't care to investigate that shows how willful they are. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? Cheers.